I couldn't stop thinking about it even when I wasn't drinking. I'd wake up and by 10 a.m. I'd think, don't have a drink today, 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 like on repeat, on my head all day,
Mm.
trying not to drink. And I remember I called my mum and I said, Mum, I'm really struggling to not drink. All I think about is drink. It's so difficult. And she went, Oh, darling, don't worry about it. If I didn't drink every day, I'd struggle too. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, everyone feels like this when they're not drinking. This is normal.
We are joined today by a very special guest. Welcome, Freya. We are continuing our conversation about alcohol, and we are so grateful to have you here. Why don't you, can you share where you started and tell us your story?
I wouldn't start drinking until after work at 5 o'clock. That was my normal. But then COVID happened, and all of a sudden it became perfectly okay to start drinking at half two, 3 o'clock.
Mhm.
So when I went back to work, if I was working from home, that was now okay.
Mhm.
And my thinking around alcohol got earlier and earlier on the day. At 12 o'clock, I'm thinking, oh God, I really want to drink. No, wait till three, wait till three. And it's like I knew event, and then it became half two. That was okay.
Mhm.
And I luckily it stopped around, I decided to get sober around that sort of point in time. But if I'd
Mhm.
left it another 5, 10 years, it would have become 1 o'clock and then 12 o'clock and then 11 o'clock. And then I would have been a morning drinker, and it would have got earlier and earlier because it was already getting earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
My breaking point was I was trying to do what's called controlled drinking. Examples of me trying to control it was, instead of drinking at night, I was going to the gym, because if I went to the gym, then I'd use the sauna, then I'd get back at 9:30, cook dinner, it'd be 10 o'clock, right, get straight to bed, then I won't drink tonight. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a way of me trying to
Mhm.
control, to stop me from drinking. Oh, I won't drink tonight. I'll have non-alcoholic wine. That will stop me from drinking.
Mhm.
Um, then it was, oh, I'm embarrassing myself when I'm drinking in front of other people. Okay, I'll only drink at home on my own, because then I can't wake up with shame. Oh, wait a second, I'm still waking up with shame and guilt.
Mhm.
Have I sent someone a text message? Have I left my front door open? Have I left my oven on? Because I remember in a drunken haze that I cooked at 10 o'clock last night, and I can't remember if I've switched it off. Oh gosh, all my fridge freezer, all of it's been left open, all my food's being ruined. I'll close it, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Or I'll eat that stuff the next day because I'm drunk again. It was all these things that were happening. And then I was like, right, can't drink at home anymore. That's getting out of control. Right, I'm only going to drink with friends and family, but not
Mhm.
at work. I can't drink at work because I'm embarrassing myself at work.
Mhm.
And that's affecting my reputation. Right, I can't do that. So, and then because I've not drank for 10 or 14 days, I'm catching up for it because I've been constantly thinking about drink for 10 or 14 days. So it was a lot of controlled drinking. And for me, what I realized was is that when I was trying to not drink, that's when I realized I might have a problem, because I couldn't stop thinking about it even when I wasn't drinking. I'd wake up and by 10 a.m. I'd think, don't have a drink today, 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 like on repeat, on my head all day,
Mhm.
trying not to drink. And I remember I called my mum and I said, Mum, I'm really struggling to not drink. All I think about is drink. It's so difficult. And she went, Oh, darling, don't worry about it. If I didn't drink every day, I'd struggle too. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, everyone feels like this when they're not drinking. This is normal.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what you'd call like my epiphany was, I was making a chicken pie and I was getting all the ingredients, and I needed white wine for the chicken pie. And I was like, right, I'll get two small bottles of white wine and then I won't drink any of it. But the two small bottles were the same price as a full bottle. And I was like, well, that's pointless. So I'll just buy the full bottle and then I can just chuck half of it down the sink, which in itself was just weird thinking. But then, of course, I then was about to chuck it down the sink, and I texted my mum and I said, do you think it would be okay for me to have a glass of wine? Which in itself, I'm 27. It's weird that I'm texting my mum asking if I could drink. Which now I look back and I knew deep down, I knew I had a problem.
You're
She went,
always
oh no,
crying
you
for
don't.
help in a way, right?
I was, yeah, like crying for
Mhm.
help. And she went, you haven't drank at home for 3 months. I think, yeah, it's totally okay.
Mm.
So I okay, great, I'll have this glass of wine. And then obviously it tasted so good and it triggered something which I now understand is like a physical response that I have
Mhm.
as an alcoholic. Then I then had to have a second glass. I couldn't not. And then I was like, right, I really want another bottle. I can't have another bottle. I shouldn't have another bottle. I've got work tomorrow. I know what I'll do. I'll clean my house and then I deserve one.
Mm.
So I cleaned the house and then I was about to have a second bottle and I text my friend saying, do you think it's okay that I open this second bottle of wine? Again, like, what am I doing?
Mm.
And she said, if that's what you think you need to do, then go for it. So I was like, right, so by this point I'm on the third glass of wine and I'm feeling okay about it. And I'm pouring the fourth glass and I'm realizing I don't want this anymore, but I couldn't stop. It's like my hand had a mind of its own and it just keeps bringing the glass to my mouth and I'm crying because I desperately don't want to drink it, but I just
Mm.
can't. I just can't not drink it. And I called her up and I said, I think I might have a problem. And she went, oh, I'm so happy you figured it out. I remember I showed up to my first meeting and I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be full of homeless people that have old clothes on that will probably smell. It'll probably be full of old men. And I, I was honestly terrified. And I showed up and there were loads of young people, loads of women. Everyone was dressed really well. They were like, do you want a cup of tea? Are you okay? Oh, is this your first meeting? Oh, come in. And it was such a different experience to what I thought it was.
What you
And I
expected it to be, right? Mm.
completely different.
Mhm.
I then realized that actually anyone could be an alcoholic. Now, at this point, I didn't consider myself an alcoholic. I knew I had a problem. I thought having a problem and being an alcoholic were two different things. And I remember I heard everyone sharing. I thought, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. And then someone shared, my drinking's not that extreme. I only drink 3 to 4 days a week, but once I start, I can't stop. And I went, boom, that's me. That's me. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm in the right place. And and for about 5 weeks, I introduced myself as saying someone who had a problem with alcohol or I had problematic drinking because I accepted that whenever I had a drink, it caused me problems in some shape or form, either sending someone messages, as I said, like leaving my fridge freezer open all the time. And I don't know how I didn't go to hospital with food poisoning, honestly. Um, Things like going to work events and really embarrassing myself, things like getting really drunk and then getting in cabs with random people to get home, things like going on dates with people that I knew would drink like me and bringing them back to my apartment, not even to like sleep with them or anything, but just because I wanted to carry on the drinking.
Mm.
And I knew this person would drink like I drank. So putting myself in really dangerous positions. So I knew it was causing me problems. There was no two ways about it. But I couldn't understand. I still had this idea that an alcoholic was someone who just couldn't be me. I was 27, I was a woman. And I know this is probably going to sound a bit sexist and ageist, but like this was just my thinking at the time, and I'm just being honest. But I was like, I'm too young, I'm a woman. I haven't lost a husband because I'm not even married, haven't lost a home because I don't own a home, haven't lost my job. I haven't lost everything. I can't be an alcoholic. Um, and then someone really kind said to me, I used to say I had a problem with alcohol for a really long time because I thought it made me sound more middle class. I laughed. I thought, yeah, that's me. Um, she said, but then I couldn't decide between the difference between the two. And I was like, oh gosh. And it was like this lightning bolt of realization of I think I might be an alcoholic.
After you started going to meetings, did you ever drink again?
I was about 2 weeks sober and I went to a wedding and I told my best friend who was the wedding, and I couldn't not go, or in my head, I was like, I can't not go. I'm doing her makeup and all the bridesmaids' makeup. I have to do it. So I can't not go. And I told her, and she got me non-alcoholic Prosecco's, and she was really kind. And then there was this one girl at the wedding, and she said, just have one or two, just control it. And I went, I can't control it. Like once I start, I can't stop. Like I can't explain it. Like I have that sit and something comes over me and I just can't stop. Like this desperation to drink more comes over. And she was like, just control it, just control it, just have one or two. It's, it's your friend's wedding, just have one or two. And I was really determined. I was like, telling myself all day, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not. And this waiter handed me a glass of Prosecco for the pictures. And that was it. That was it. And even then, I tried to control it with eating more. I was like, if I eat a lot of food and drink a lot of water, I won't get too drunk. And it kind of worked to a degree, because I knew I can't stop the drinking. So what else can I control to stop my behavior getting out of hand? Well, I can eat more and I can drink more water. That's something I can do. And that just sort of shows like the desperation of when you start, you just can't stop, because you just know you've got to put other things in place to try and control it, because you can't control it. You're out of control.
Freya, was there anyone growing up or in your life who you saw had a problem with alcohol?
My dad, I've never seen him go a day without drinking my entire life. So that sort of gives you an idea. That second to last drink where I was sitting there crying and I couldn't stop drinking, I just remember I just didn't want to be like him. Like I just didn't. I looked at him and I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to end up like him. And that was a real motivating factor. And as I came into this fellowship, I looked at his drinking at 27 and mine at 27. Mine was already a lot worse. So I knew my ending wasn't going to be very good, because his ending is already not that great. So I knew I had to do something about it. And honestly, when I first came into the fellowship, I was more looking at it as preventative action. Like I'm not an alcoholic yet, but if I keep going, like I'm going to be. And then I sort of realized that I am an alcoholic and I'm just at the early stages of this illness. And if I carry on, it's just going to progress and I will be like that, if not way worse, and probably much quicker, to be honest. I also just want to say my dad, he isn't nice when he drinks. So I always thought of an alcoholic as someone who gets really nasty. And as long as when you drink, you're not mean to people and you're not violent, you're okay. So I never thought of it as a problem for me, because I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not hitting anyone. So I'm okay. Like it's fine for me. That's another thing I learned in the fellowship, was that this illness, from my understanding anyways, it's a threefold illness. It's got a few different parts to it. So you've got the physical side, that once you put a drink in you, like you can't stop. And we call that the physical allergy. And the reason why it's an allergy, it's not that you come up in hives or, you need a shot to stop you from going to hospital, but it's more like you have a different bodily reaction to the rest of the population. And that was definitely my understanding. Like I had a drink, couldn't stop. It was the mental obsession as well, like just thinking about it constantly. I remember my first 6 weeks of sobriety were really hard. I was thinking about it constantly. And I honestly, I looked at people that had years of sobriety and I thought, how do you feel like this all the time? And then they said to me, no, you don't. It does go. It gets better. You'll be okay. And I was like, oh, thank God. I hope it does get better. And then there was another part which we call like the spiritual malady. It's like the hole in your soul. It's the feeling alone, feeling like you have to do everything in your life on your own, and just feeling like you have to be self-sufficient. And this thing of like, if you said something wrong, I would ruminate on that, like, oh my God, I embarrassed myself. What do they think of me? How's this going to affect the relationship? Blah, blah, blah. Have a drink. I can't cope with it. Have a drink. Oh, I had a parking ticket. Have a drink. Oh my gosh, someone said something to me at work. Oh, have a drink. I just couldn't cope with life. But to have a way to go to someone or a place and share what was going on with me and feel understood and accepted and loved, it made me feel like I had other tools I could pick up that weren't a drink, which also stopped me from drinking. So it was really, really remarkable. I almost had this like new design for living. And I would always look at people and think, how are they doing all this stuff and they're just normal? And I almost had like people telling me how I could live normally now. And it was remarkable. I know I keep saying that, but it honestly it changed my life. So I'm forever grateful. Because I think for so long I thought alcohol was my friend. It felt like my solution to everything that ever went wrong, to my feelings. Like I couldn't really cope with my emotions. I couldn't cope with relationships, friendships. And it was the one constant in my life that I could guarantee could make me feel better. And so I didn't see it as a problem. I saw it as like my saving grace.
You're listening to a special episode on the Solutions Manual podcast. Please subscribe and share to help others.
You've covered the illusion of control, right, related to drinking, right? What a lot of people think they do. You talked about the environment, right? How you were growing up, the people you've been hanging out with, the normalizing certain behaviors and how and what type of impact it had on you. You talked about the consequences of drinking, right? On your reputation, on how your brain works, on your relationships, on you putting yourself into danger, right? You might actually consider yourself lucky that nothing serious have happened, right? Because that's not the story that everyone can share, right? I mean, we know that there are things happening, and again, whether this is in relationships or road traffic accidents, many different things going on, right? From pregnancies that people didn't want to have, through the abuse and violence, right, that you can get yourself into. But you have very early understood, observed, even though you had certain beliefs or stereotypes, that drinking has very negative impact on your life. And a lot of people do have that dissonance, right? That in the neuroscience, this is the cognitive dissonance, right? You do something, then the next day, as you said, you feel ashamed or unhappy, but you keep repeating that behavior. And the normal thing that most people do at that stage, they don't reflect, they don't look for help, they don't try, because you've been crying for help, right? You've been trying to find a way out in any way you could, or you knew is available to you. But most people do the opposite. So most people change the beliefs about themselves, right? They flip their identity. They start thinking about, again, alcohol being or drinking being part of who they are, right? I'm this funny person, or I'm a connoisseur, or this is my that's my thing, right? This is my lifestyle. Because that minimizes that dissonance, right? So they no longer see this as a problem, right? It's just, okay, yeah, this is who I am, this is what I do, and that's just what it is. And they don't seek help for years, or don't even realize or refuse to realize the problem that they have for years. Or they try to control, again, with that illusion of control, not realizing that you cannot do that, right? One reason is because of how alcohol works, right? It's a central nervous system depressant, which does exactly what you said, right? It stops you from being able to control your behavior, right? And you don't need much, right, in order for that to happen.
That dissonance for years, that was me. I would tell myself when I saw people not drink like I drank, that I was very cultured, middle class, love good wine. That's what it is. I just love really good wine. I know what I'm talking about with wine. I'm a wine connoisseur. That's why I love my wine. So that was the story I told myself for many years, just to be transparent. And also I would always think about back to a time when the drinking wasn't causing me problems, thinking that I could always get that back.
Your story is extremely inspiring, I think, in a way, partially because, like, making a change early
Mm.
is always more impactful
Mm.
and better long term than making a change late, right? We know that from the people that we work with, that many of them realize that when they start or when they realize that they need a change, it's quite late in life, right? It's like we compare it to braking late before the red lights, right? I mean, if you start slowing down early, it's easy, right? But if you want to, it's possible, right? It's still possible if it's late, but it's just much more harsh and difficult and dangerous sometimes as well, especially when it comes to health, right? So I think that any story where someone managed to do something early, or I think it's quite inspiring, and I think you have a lot to share with people.
Yes.
Especially in today's day and age, and especially in the UK, where drinking is seen as a norm, right? Not as brain poisoning yourself. I think it's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my drinking has never been normal, but it could be disguised behind normal teenage university drinking,
Yeah.
because you can trick yourself, and even really society when you're at that age makes it seem normal to drink like that. So I always drank to blackout. Um, I very rarely didn't drink to blackout, and I just sort of presumed everyone was drinking like me.
Mm.
And especially at uni, the culture is to go out and get really, really drunk.
Yep.
So I just thought it was normal. And I think it wasn't until I left uni and I went to my first share house after uni, where everyone's obviously now got grown up jobs. And all of a sudden, no one wants to drink and get really, really drunk middle of the week.
Mm.
But I still did.
Mm.
And I just sort of told myself, oh, I'm just the fun person. They're all really boring. I'm just fun. I want to keep the party going. Um, but yeah, I think already the signs were there that my drinking wasn't normal, even in my very early 20s. Um, and when people think of an alcoholic, they think of someone who is drinking from the morning till night,
Mm.
probably drinking vodka, probably doesn't have a job, probably
Yeah.
older, probably a man. And that isn't, people who do get to that point, they didn't start there. They probably
Mm.
started out drinking with their friends as a teenager, and it getting to blackout and it never being quite normal, and it progressing over the years. And
Mm-hmm.
for some people, it progresses really quickly, which is why I think I'm starting to see more younger people, such as myself, going into a 12-step fellowship.
How old are you now?
I'm 29, I'm 30 in October.
Okay. So that's very, very young to have the level of insight and self-reflection and self-awareness
Mm.
that as you have. Since you've stopped, what
Mm.
has changed for you, and how?
I'd say everything, basically everything in my life has changed. I'd say for my career, it massively changed. So I remember I was, not everyone does this, and I just want to say you don't have to do this. I was honest with my work, with my manager, about me being in a fellowship and trying to get sober. I did that more for accountability reasons, because I went to a lot of work events and I was really worried in my early sobriety that I'd relapse. And actually, he was the one that picked up on the fact that I wasn't letting him buy me drinks, because I didn't want him to notice that I wasn't drinking. And I told him, and he was super supportive. And I will forever be grateful to that man for him being so supportive with that. But what I will say is, within a few months, I got promoted, and he said to me, I just want you to know, if you'd carried on drinking the way that you were drinking, I would never have been able to promote you, because I couldn't have someone who drinks like that behaving like that at work events and be sort of more senior in the company. So already, me just being sober for only a few months, I was seeing changes in my career and how I was being perceived at work and things like that. Uh, Personally, it changed a lot. So I became a lot calmer, a lot more tolerant. You know, the steps sort of teach you to be like that and to think differently about situations. I guess pretty similar to how CBT works in a way. Like it challenges your thinking around things. And that definitely massively impacted my relationships with my family and my friends because I was able to manage my own emotions. And so I was able to show up differently in those relationships. So even if they did something to upset me, I was able to remain calm and maybe not even tell them how I feel and sort of second guess my thinking. Actually, do I feel like that? Do I think like that? Speak through it with some friends in the fellowship, check my thinking out with that, and then respond appropriately rather than just going head first. So that really helped my relationships, and also making an amends to those people really helped with those relationships. So my whole life, basically, since I started my period, which was when I was a teenager, my period has always been erratic, and I always put that down to that's my periods. I stopped drinking; they became regular, like clockwork.
Mm.
It was insane. Within 2 months, my periods became normal.
And that's quick.
Yeah, yeah. Like, so that just shows how much drink was having an effect on me. My nails, they would always break really easily. They stopped breaking. My skin was red and really swollen and awful. It kind of semi-cleared up. I lost 22 pounds from not drinking. I was still eating loads of sugar. I was eating whatever I wanted. Like my people in the fellowship would just say, hey, if sugar's going to stop you from drinking, like, you know, put out your nearest fire. Alcohol's your nearest fire. Put that out first. Worry about the sugar later on. So I was eating whatever I wanted. And I still lost 22 pounds because my body was functioning normally for the first time in years. And my metabolism was probably normal. Like probably loads of things were just happening that were contributing to that.
Yeah.
I wasn't having so many calories. I wasn't eating rubbish food at 10 o'clock at night. And
you've recovered also very fast as well, right? You've noticed changes in how your body works and what you've mentioned 2 months, right? For an average, the average time it takes, it's about 9 months for people to start to notice change in their drinking since the last time they drank, right? And so that's fast. And also a lot of people fail to realize, you know, they drink for years, right? They realize in their 50s or 60s that they drank away their life, right? And that's usually after something significant happens, and that sometimes that event is still not enough for them to stop. And the damage that you do to yourself throughout life is cumulative, right? Something that the earlier you start, the longer it takes. There are some things that cannot be undone, right? And we talked about this in our previous podcast episode.
The unmanageability, that was harder to acknowledge because I hadn't lost all those things. So I had to look at the little things. Like I wasn't brushing my teeth twice a day and every day. I work in dental. I wasn't eating properly 6 days a week because I was either too drunk or too hungover to eat properly. I remember I said to my sister, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm sober. I can start using HelloFresh." She was like, "Why couldn't you use HelloFresh?" I went, "Oh, because it would give me 6 meals a week and I was too drunk or too hungover to eat properly." I could also never have healthy romantic relationships. I partly think that's because of my dad. I didn't have a really good model of what a good man was. I honestly, probably up until I joined the fellowship and I saw good men, I didn't really know they existed. That sounds awful, I know. But I had a dad that was not a very nice person. I had an uncle that was lovely, actually. He was really lovely. I've had a couple of uncles that are really nice. But when it came to men I was dating, they all sort of in some way replicated my dad to a degree, even if it was a small degree. You know, either that they sort of loved bombed me in the beginning and was a bit manipulative or used me a bit. And through the steps, I realized actually I've got to take a bit of ownership for that because I'm essentially choosing these men and I'm not healing myself. And through the steps, and also through a bit of therapy as well, I feel like I'm not a finished article by any means. I have a lot more work to do, but I'm now in a really healthy romantic relationship with like a lovely, lovely man, probably like the best person I know. He's also sober, and we don't really argue. When we do argue, it's more like a conversation, not an argument. We talk about our feelings in a healthy way. We talk about our inner child and like what's being triggered in us. And it's a really healthy relationship. So I'm now able to have healthy friendships as well. When I got sober, not straight away, but within probably about a year, all my unhealthy friendships that with people either that drank like me or thought like me, that sort of liked the drama, they kind of just went. And I was able to set boundaries for the first time in my life. Friends in fellowship taught me that I was allowed to think, Freya, what do I want? What am I okay with? Can I say no? I am going to say no. That was powerful. And so actually a lot of these friendships, it wasn't even me having to like cut them off. It would be, hey, I'm going to set this boundary. I'd really like it if you don't treat me like this anymore. That would be really nice. I don't want to be your friend anymore if I can't treat you like that. It's essentially how it kind of went. Um, so that was really quite remarkable. So I now have much healthier friendships, healthier relationship with my family, healthier physical relationship. Mentally, I feel a lot more screwed on. Emotionally, I have things. So I meditate a lot now, and that's been really helpful. I journal a lot now as well. And sometimes if someone's really upset me or something's really bothering me, I'll write a letter to them. I won't send it, but I'll write a letter. And that's been revolutionary to sort of figure out how I'm feeling about things. Because before I feel this buildup of emotion, like a boiling pot. Imagine you've got a pot and it's boiling of emotion and the lid is doing this really loud. And all it takes is a little thing to happen in the day, boom, and it boils over. And that's what I was like. So when it was boiling over, to put the lid back on, I'd have a drink, stuff the feelings down to the point that I couldn't cry sober. I could only watch a sad film, get drunk, and then that's how I could cry. Now, when I feel like a load of emotion, I'll write about it and I'll journal, and I can cry now. Like you heard me earlier, I can cry. I know that sounds so stupid, but I can cry today without needing a drink. So yeah, that was like a really big thing to have this new way of life, and have this support around me and sort of be loved back to life, I guess. And there's so many big elements of the steps. So there's obviously accepting, and there's also trying to find a higher power, which I might sound a bit weird, but I guess for me what it was is if something went wrong, I could now maybe believe and have hope that there was a reason for that going wrong and that there was something better for me on the other side, and that it was all part of a plan. And that really helped me to feel at peace and not need a drink. And it made me feel not so alone. I also had to write down all my resentments and my fears and things that went on and share that with someone. And that was really powerful because all these things that I used to drink on, like things that had happened to me as a child, I could accept and be at peace with for the first time in my life, and just feel this sense of relief. Like I can't explain it. Like just a weight lifted. I always had to make an amends for my wrongdoing, and that made me feel like I could walk around the world with my head held high and like again just being more at peace. And also when everyone actually kind of came back and went, no, I'm really just glad that you're better now and you're in a better place and you're just a nicer person, it helped to heal a lot of my relationships, to be honest. And then one of the last steps is helping other people, and that just helps me build my self-esteem and makes me feel good that I'm helping other people, and also keeps me sober because when sometimes you're further away from a drink, like I'm 2 years in now, you can sometimes forget you're drinking. So when you're working with someone who's newer in and they're like, oh, this is how I drink, you're like, God, yeah, that's how I used to drink.
This constant energy that you put into negotiating with yourself about what you will or will not do, the time around what you will or will not do. And I just wanted to note for people that it's probably very easy to think of this in terms of food and drink, because a lot of people who struggle with putting the right things in their bodies will constantly be obsessed with these thoughts, right? If I go to the gym, I will deserve the cake. If I do this, and it's always this, this negotiation. But putting so much energy into this, as you said, makes it you have no energy left for anything else. But other people might struggle with this or do this sort of controlled, like putting all of this into something with anything. not just something like alcohol or food. Some people might negotiate with themselves around taking a walk or a friendship or a relationship or purchases. So it's really like applicable to anything that you become aware of putting extra effort and cognitive energy in. There were, I think, some of the key moments that you have really stood out are these moments of the self-acceptance. One is I'm putting a lot of extra energy into trying not to drink, that when I do drink, I have no energy left at all to be able to take care of my body. And then that has physical and mental impacts. And you talked about this. So this moment of self-acceptance of now you're calling and now you're saying the words, I have a problem. But what led to that was just this depletion of energy for you to be able to step out and see this for yourself. Then there's this acceptance of the meeting. The first meeting wasn't what you expected it to be. And you're kind of accepting that, okay, I relate to these people because they're humans, not because of all the descriptors that I had in my head or the stereotypes or the previous experience. There's a lot of acceptance that comes with that. Acceptance that you probably had to come to the meeting after the wedding, and that probably wasn't a very comfortable meeting for you. And so, but it sounds like every time you had these next moments of self-acceptance, the energy that you put in to that, and then the outputs of these, whether it's professional, personal, physical, get better in some way. Regardless of what somebody might struggle with, there will be lifelong moments of this, oh, okay, this is who I am, and this is what it will take. But for people who might just not quite accept first that they're putting so much energy into something, knowing that there will be moments like this for life, can you talk about maybe some of those other moments for you and what you might tell somebody?
Yeah, so with the last drink, I think with that acceptance, what helped me with that was before I couldn't stop drinking, but I also didn't want to stop. That was the first time I actually wanted to stop and couldn't.
Okay.
That was what helped me realize, oh, I've got a problem because I desperately want to stop, but I can't right now. I would say acceptance is like about letting go of the outcome and knowing that you can't be in control of everything. One phrase that I really love is let go and let God. It's sort of like it's up to the big man in the sky, really, what happens next, sort of thing. That's just sort of helps me. My whole life, I'd actually tried to control everything to some degree. I was always trying to control the outcome. I'd work really hard at school because I really wanted to have a good grade. Because if I got a good grade, then I could go to uni. And if I went to uni and did well at uni, then I could get a good job and then I could earn lots of money and I could do this. It was always like, if I control this thing and do really well with this thing, then this can happen and then I'll be okay. That was a big one for me. And same with relationships. If I wouldn't say I was overly dishonest really in relationships, but I was always probably trying to control how people perceived me in some way, because I thought that would help with relationships as well. So my dad, when I first came into the fellowship, I remember I said to someone, I will never forgive that man for the things that he has done to me and my family. Like I will never forgive the abuse that we had to suffer. And I was so angry. I was so angry at him. And now I'm in then I sort of started doing the steps and I got to step 5, which is sort of when you sort of share this stuff. And it really helped me to change my way of thinking towards him and sort of accept him for who he is and where he's at and actually the pain he's been through. I had this idea, and actually I'd say probably a lot of my resentments come from expectations, to be honest. So I had an expectation that dad should be this guy that protects you and loves you and doesn't want to harm you. That's what a dad should be. And my friend said to me, you know, your expectations aren't unrealistic. No, aren't unreasonable. You know, you want your dad to be a good man, but they are unrealistic given what he suffered as a child and what he went through, and that he was never modelled how to be a good dad. And wow, that really helped me to accept him and actually feel compassion and empathy for him and the pain he must be in, for him to act out in that way. And I truly now, I sit here and I I don't have a relationship for him, but I have love for him. I pray for him every day. I pray that he can have a better relationship with himself and that he can heal so that he can have a better relationship with others. Um, because I accept now that he is just someone who is incredible pain, who maybe never got shown how to love in a healthy way and how to maybe heal. And you know, he could possibly, if he doesn't get sober and doesn't maybe find his own version of a 12-step fellowship, that maybe he might die always being in pain. And that is so, so sad, and really does make me feel sad, and upset. So yeah, I'd say a lot of my acceptance, it has to be from coming from a place of compassion and empathy for others, and also accepting that I can't control everything and that maybe what I dream is the best outcome for this, I might be completely wrong about. What I think is a good outcome could be completely off. And it might be a better outcome for me, but it might not be for everybody else. And maybe there's something better for me on the other side that I'm not even aware of is even possible. So it's not, I think acceptance is sometimes understanding that you don't understand everything, and that's okay. And acceptance maybe comes from maybe trying to understand something or someone differently. And then from that, you can maybe find peace with it. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
It makes, Freya, a lot of sense, and it comes in a large degree from self-awareness, right? Because you started to see things differently the moment you learned to step out of your own head, right? Where you replaced I would call it, well, the self-centered thinking, the automatic feelings that you had of anger because things were not the way you wished they were, right? When you replace them with what you said, compassion, submission, love, right? Or you started seeing pain that other people are going through in a different way, right? It's no longer about how you automatically react to the reality. It's starting to see this from a broader perspective. And for you, it seems like this letting go and this ability to be compassionate and submit to life in a way. But for different people, there might be different sources of that, but they all lead to the same outcome, to starting to have a broader perspective and seeing life and accepting life as it is, rather than seeing everything through the lens of the emotions you're experiencing in the moment. And especially if those emotions and thoughts are distorted by poison, right? That makes it even worse, less realistic, and more difficult to deal with, right? So yes, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
So if someone is in this situation that they're sort of in between the realization that they really don't want to continue the way that they're going, but they're not really sure what to do next, what would you tell them?
I'd say, first of all, probably don't call anyone in your life that drinks or uses the way you do. My experience of that is they will say that you don't have a problem because they don't want to look at their own problem. So when I first joined a 12-step fellowship, I had people in my family call me up and say that they don't think I should be going, that I drink just like them, and that does that mean they need to go? I said, that's a choice you need to make. So I would say, but luckily when I was having these conversations, I was quite far in, so I felt strong enough to have them. So I would say call someone that, if you're going to call a friend for support, call someone that probably doesn't drink like you. That's not going to encourage you to keep drinking and using the way that you're drinking. Probably number one. Stay out of what I'd call wet places. So don't go to pubs, don't go to places that are going to maybe make you drink, like parties. Don't test yourself. If you're in early sobriety, don't test yourself. That can come. You can go to those places eventually when you've got a bit stronger sobriety, but don't put yourself at risk like that unnecessarily. I've seen people do that, and it doesn't end well. I did that. I went to a wedding 2 weeks in. I relapsed. So that's another one I'd say. There are lots of helplines you can call. There's lots of fellowships out there. A lot more than I realised until I joined a fellowship. I didn't realise there were so many. There's ones for eating, by the way. There's lots of different fellowships depending on what yours is. So you can call a helpline, and basically what they will do is they will speak you through what you're going through, and normally they will then put you in touch with someone who lives in your area that can maybe take you to a meeting, to your first few meetings, so you don't need to go alone. They will normally put you with someone who's the same gender, normally, to keep you safe. So if you're a woman, you'll go with a fellow woman. If you're a guy, you'll go with a guy. And that's just so you can feel the most comfortable you can feel. But please share that with them, and what you feel comfortable. I mean, share what you feel comfortable with. So I would say call them up. I would say if you are drinking and using to the point, because I also want to highlight this, you don't need to be an alcoholic and drink all day, every day. You can drink a few days a week, and but if you are someone who needs to drink all day, every day, and you are physically reliant, I would go to potentially like a rehab or somewhere to physically detox, because it might not be safe for you to detox on your own. If you are that physically reliant, and that's really important. You might have some people that say just try and cut down, but if you're anything like me, I couldn't just cut down. Once I put a drink in me, that's it. I'm done for the rest of the night.
One thing I just want to add is you've touched upon this very acute, just purely for the medical reasons, of this acute form of alcohol withdrawal, right? When it becomes an emergency. And I think it's just important to reiterate, not if you notice things that you're confused, you have changes in your heartbeat, seizures, tremors, whatever that could be due to alcohol poisoning, that is a life-threatening medical emergency. So it's not just maybe consider not doing this alone. No. You should seek professional help immediately. That kind of the lyric complications from the alcohol withdrawal symptoms after acute alcohol poisoning are fatal in up to 40% of cases. So that requires urgent medical treatment. That's an extreme form, however, right? So that's just want to highlight that here for the listeners. That's a serious thing to seek medical help.
If you aren't someone that drinks, all day, every day, and you feel you could potentially stop safely on your own, then I would definitely do that. As I said, like, in my experience and in many other alcoholics' experience that I have a friendship with, they agree they can't minimize their drinking. So really, abstinence is the only way to stay sober. You can't dip in and out of it. So I would say get to meetings. Meet people, get some phone numbers. Again, potentially of the same sex. Keep yourself safe. I don't mean physically safe. I just mean, you were saying earlier about how people can cross addict, and definitely that's something in early sobriety to be careful. If you can cross addict with exercise, other drugs, gambling, relationships, all sorts. So just try and maybe minimize that if you can. That's been my experience anyway. I definitely, I turned to sugar, craving sugar like you wouldn't believe. And I went to a second meeting almost a week later, and I said to someone who was 30 years sober, which I couldn't even get my head around, and I said, "Oh, I'm really craving sugar all the time." And she went, "Oh, what were you drinking?" And I said, "I was drinking a lot of wine." She went, "Ah, that'll be it. It's a lot of sugar in wine. Your body's going through basically withdrawal right now, and it's craving something to resemble alcohol." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Then I sort of realized, oh, I'm a bit more dependent on this than I thought. And that was crazy to me. And I'm just now trying to I'm sort of found a way to minimize that, but sugar was better than alcohol. So yeah, I would call someone. I basically I would ask for help. It's really scary, and I know sometimes when you're first trying to get sober, a lot of shame can be attached to that stigma, to that label of an alcoholic. I would say now I am a grateful and proud alcoholic. And the reason why I say that is because I have got a life that I would never have got if I wasn't one. I'd say I have the most beautiful life now. I would never have somewhere I can touch into, like join, a few days a week if I needed to. I wouldn't have the friends I've got. I wouldn't have the mental clarity and the peace in my heart that I have if I wasn't an alcoholic who had gone through the steps. So I know there's a lot of shame, but it won't be there forever. And what's beautiful about joining a fellowship or asking for help even or going to a rehab is you're going to be in a room with people that understand you, that accept you. They will share things that you would never share with anyone because you think, oh God, I can't share how I used to drink and drive with my kids in the car. People will share that stuff. And because we understand you, and you're safe in those places. I'd say just ask for help. Don't feel you've got to do it on your own. For the first few weeks when I joined the fellowship, I actually thought I'd read a load of self-help books first before I do the steps. And then I realized the steps actually would probably help me more than any self-help book I'd read because I couldn't help my own thinking because my thinking was skewed. So yeah, I just say ask for help, really. There's lots of help out there. It doesn't even need to be with a fellowship. Maybe go to your doctor, see if they've got any advice for you. If you've got any closed-mouthed friends that you trust, the amount of times I've shared that I'm an alcoholic and someone at work has said, oh, my wife's an alcoholic, and I've been able to give them advice and help. So pretty much anyone I've spoken to has someone that they are connected to that is either an alcoholic, an addict, or is in recovery. So it might even be just sharing it. I called my friend and she said that she knew people who were part of a fellowship. So she then sort of guided me towards that. So yeah, I would just say pick up the phone and ask for help.
Yeah, I think that's immensely important. And self-help books, they sell, but they don't work. I mean, if they did, there will be no people with problems, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. And we need outside help precisely for the perspective that we're lacking ourselves, right? It's just essential thing to have. And we actually did a podcast episode recently on the importance of support system, whether it's in your professional or personal life. And family, although those are people who are typically close to you and people that you're familiar with, might not necessarily be a good environment or a good support system, depending on what you require. And there is no shame in admitting this, and maybe cutting the relationships even if necessary, if this is something that drags you down or prevents you from making the changes or choices in your life that you need, right? There is no shame in that, right? You can still love them. You don't need to listen to them or have a too close of a relationship with them, right? It's important to not to be ashamed of that.
The solutions that you've talked about are very simple. Ask for help, spend some time with yourself, get your support network, and then love yourself. And
yeah,
that's it, really, which is hard. Not easy, but that's really as simple as as it can be. I just want to say thank you for being so open and sharing this with us, and giving us and yourself and people listening time to really think about the things that we can do to make ourselves better and the people around us too. So thank you.
Remarkable achievement.
Day at a time. But thank you so much for asking me. It's been a real honor.